I started my freshman year of college at a university in my hometown that's pretty nice. I'm not going to share too much about it, but it has a smaller amount of students, but enough that you don't really run into people too often. I lived on campus, and I was only 17 at the time. I had Tinder, of course, as I was fresh out of a relationship and looking to experience new things in college. I matched with this one boy, Asher, who seemed nice enough, pretty socially awkward, but I never really minded because I have anxiety issues myself, and I'm really sympathetic to it. Because of that, I ignored a lot of the warning signs I should have. We texted for a while and he seemed really nice and caring. He wanted to know a lot about me, which I wasn't too keen on sharing, but I told him the basics, and we texted kind of regularly. He lived on campus as well, and invited me to hang out. At that time, things didn't seem too sketchy, so I was completely down. When I first met him, that's when things started to get uncomfortable. We hung out in his dorm, which was pretty standard overall. I got cozy with him on his couch. I'd say almost cuddling, but not quite. Still really standard. When we started talking more, I realized how uncomfortable things really were. He kept making comments that just put me off, but I tried to ignore them. Things like, "I've never cuddled with anyone before. Sorry if I'm doing it wrong." And so many comments about how he really liked me a lot and wanted me to stay forever. Weird word choice, but whatever. He's just trying to be nice. I'll let him down easy, I thought. I ended up hanging out pretty quickly for some fake excuse and went right back to my room. He kept texting me and professing how much he was into me, and I told him, "Sorry, but I'm not looking for any kind of relationship, so I do not want to keep things from Manic." A bad lie, but I'm very non-confrontational and didn't want to be mean. That's when things started to get really weird. He sent me this long paragraph saying about how it was okay I didn't want a relationship now, that he'd wait for me and save his virginity for me. We had never talked anything like that before. I never even really told him I liked him or even flirted back. I just never turned him down. It was one of the creepiest messages I'd ever received. Unfortunately, that was just the start of all the weird things to come. He wouldn't leave me alone, even though I kept trying to de-escalate things, and I kept running into him all over campus. I wasn't sure how he suddenly was nearby when classes ended, and I wasn't sure why suddenly we'd both be in the dining hall at the same times, even though I hadn't changed my regular routine. But I just tried to brush it off. Definitely a mistake. I ended up turning him down completely, because I was getting creeped out and couldn't figure out how he wasn't understanding that I didn't want anything romantic with him. He started guilt-tripping me, telling me about how he was going to hurt himself, and no one was ever going to love him. I've been in manipulative relationships in the past, and I recognized that behavior right away and shut it down. I told him I couldn't be friends with him, and in my head, that was that. He didn't reply for a while, but when he did, everything went to chaos. I was luckily out of town at the time for a concert, so that made me feel a lot better. He went off, sent me paragraph after paragraph about how horrible of a person I was, and how I was just all these terrible names and needed to be put in my place. Regular nice guy things. I could handle that. I just ignored it. Then, once the regret set in, he made it his mission to win my love however possible. He apologized profusely, told me how he couldn't be all alone, and I was his only friend and how much he loved me. Whatever. Terrible. But I didn't care about that. Then, I guess to prove his dedication, he did the creepiest thing yet. First, he told me he was outside of my room. We did not live in the same dorm building, and you can't get into the buildings unless you live there. I don't know who let him in. I wasn't there, and my roommate was out, so that was okay. I texted back at that point and told him to leave and how wrong and creepy that was, and he pulled out his last resort. He just sent me screenshots of my contact and his phone. On Apple devices, you can fill in tons of information and have a notes section. Everything was entirely full. He knew my home address, my room number on campus, my parents' and brothers' names, my pets' names, my schedule. It was terrifying because I'm a fairly private person. My Instagram is my only social media, and I do not share that much on it. I don't think I'll ever find out how he discovered all of that about me. I blocked him on everything right away and reported him to the school. The school did nothing at all. I still see him on campus, and he still tries to approach me when he sees me. I always duck and run, and it's worked so far. To the terrifying Tinder match who may still be following me around to this day, please leave me alone. I'm a female, 23 now. In this story, I was 21 with a 4-month-old baby, He's mine and he's 2 now. I'm about 5'9", a bit overweight, and I have social anxiety around new people. I went with my sister, 26, 5 feet tall to her, work as she worked at a very nice restaurant in a shopping center, and we went straight there for her 6 p.m. start. After being in the city all day collecting money for a cat rescue, I'm just chilling out, eating good food and binging on Reddit when I decide I want to smoke. I know, bad habit. So I pack up the kidlit and let my sister know I'm going out to the car to park to have a smoke as she passes through the dining area. The car park was about 70 meters away from the restaurant, had good lighting, and because it was so late I could hang around near the doors. This is where it gets creepy. The security guard was doing his rounds about my height and Indian. He decides to check on me. I mean, that's cool, man, I'm just having a smoke. And the conversation went something like this. Good, good. You're a baby. Very cute baby. I have 4 at home. You got a husband? Yes, he's my baby, that's good. I have a fiancé. A complete lie. I was 100% single, but he was already making me anxious. I can be husband. I look after baby for you. I look after you. No thanks. I'm sure your wife wouldn't appreciate that. No, wife love baby, wife will love you. You come home with me? I finish my smoke. Been moving the pram further away from him each second. No thanks. I'm going now. He then follows me inside. I go all around the mostly closed shopping center, hoping to lose him and Kohl's. I lost him for about 5 seconds, but Kohl's had shut for the night. The only place left open was my sister's work, so I went back there even though I didn't want him to know where I was. As I was about to walk into the restaurant, I saw him coming up the escalator. He was still watching me. I take the last 2 steps toward the hostess, who happened to be the owner's daughter, and told her what was going on. At this point, the security guard is standing in front of the restaurant still staring at me. The hostess takes me to a semi-secluded booth and goes to talk to her dad about the situation. As she is gone, creepy security guard came into the dining area, searched for me, and then came and sat in my booth, way too close to me and my child. How old are you? I want to ravish you pretty women. You be mother to my babies. We make cute babies. At this point, it was very clear that I was very uncomfortable, and he still made it worse. Don't worry. I security. I protect you and baby. He is reaching across the table with one hand now. The other hand is reaching towards my pram. I'm frozen. I don't care about the hand near me. I'm watching the other one. Nobody touches my baby. I'm about to snap, go full mama bear mode, when the owner, 40s to 50s, 6 foot plus, big wide build of the restaurant steps in, asking if there's a problem. Is there a problem here? English is not his native language, but he gets the point across. His English skills deteriorate when he gets angry. This is important to the story, I promise. No problem. Just talking to my lovely lady. This is a customer. Has she done something wrong? No, never. She's my lady. See, we're going to get married. He begins to grin creepily. The silent warning to play along is etched into his face, finding comfort in the presence of the manager. Funny lady. Please just leave me alone. See, we joke. I just want to eat my dinner. Please just leave me alone. She says she wants you to leave now. She's just messing. She loves me. I'd be waiting for you, my pretty lady. He leaves at that point. The manager makes sure I'm okay and moves to the employee break room and fills my sister in. 2 hours later and my sister has finished her shift. We pack up and head to the car. SG, the security guard, out of nowhere. He was actually waiting for me. I take pretty lady and baby home now. Come on, pretty lady, we go home. Like an angel steps out from his car right behind the security guard. She's going home with her sister. No, pretty lady, mine. She come home with me. Get in the car. I take care of this. So we get in the car and go home. Found out the next day from my sister that her boss had physically restrained the security guard because he went to grab my arm as I was getting in the car and then got him fired and permanently banned from that shopping center. In my mid-20s, I was bouncing around. I couldn't settle on what to do. And after a long and terrible relationship, was mostly interested in having fun. I was at university, but wasn't the most committed student. I've been working in a restaurant in a hotel, but hated it. And a friend told me about working as a receptionist in a brothel. It's completely legal where I live, and said the money was decent. It fit in well with university. It wasn't difficult. And if clients were rude, you could just kick them out. Unlike hospitality, where you had to be polite all the time. I found a place that was looking for receptionists and went for an interview and got a job. And it was fine. I mean, Not the most interesting job in the world. I could smoke out the back. Back when cigarettes didn't cost $50 a pack. I could study if it was quiet. And I know what everyone is thinking at this point. Receptionist is code for worker, and I promise it isn't. I have no proof, but lying about it doesn't make the story any better. In fact, if I were one of the workers or the ladies of the night there, it might be an even more interesting story. Sadly, no such excitement in my life. We had regular clients and they all had reputations of some kind. This guy only books half an hour, but always extends his bookings at least once. This guy will pay extra for dirty talk, and a lot of it was innocuous. Just information passed between people that we as receptionists always heard all about. But some of it was more along the lines of a warning. This guy will try and remove the protection. This guy wants to spank, but won't ask first. And then there was the doctor. The doctor had a lot of money and would potentially book multiple workers for a long time. He paid well for reasonably boring extras, like fancy lingerie or roleplay, aka nurses' uniforms. But he had a big red warning sign above his head. The first time he came in, one of the other receptionists warned me, no one has to do an intro with him if they don't want to. Warn the girls, it's the doctor. I called the intro, i.e., I went into the staff room and said intro in meeting room 1, which generally meant that every available worker should go in, say their name, flirt, whatever. After which one of the receptionists would find out who they wanted to see and how long for. And all the workers stood up and then said, it's the doctor. And all but 2 sat back down. So I immediately asked what the deal is, and they explained that he likes cocaine. He likes workers who like or pretend to like it as well, and he is a neurosurgeon who gets access to all sorts of weird stuff. And often his use is far from pure, not cut with drain cleaner, but cut with pharmaceuticals like anesthetics used for surgery. He also enjoyed drug insertion. I'm sure you can fill in the blanks. He was sometimes belligerent if workers refused him, after they had started the booking, and he was just creepy. When we go in to check with him, he'd try and grab us, make us, the receptionists, sit down. And to be clear, I'm not what people would consider attractive. Plus, he'd do it with all the receptionists. He'd grab our hands and try and stroke our arms. He had this super intense stare, like a mannequin that could actually make eye contact. I know that sounds weird, but it's hard to describe. It's like he was staring right into you, but also not seeing you at all. His expressions were weird, and just didn't work on his face. Like his mouth would smile or move, but his eyes would change from that intense stare. I guess it might have been what he was on, but it was deeply unsettling, and just made you feel sick. Having said all that, there were a few experienced workers who knew how to handle him, get the most out of him whilst experiencing the least possible risk. It's possible to fake snorting something. I didn't know this before that point, hence giving workers the option to meet the client. I can't remember if he saw anyone that first time. If I recall correctly, he had a handful of bookings in the time I was working there. We did have strict instructions not to ever let anyone do an outcall with him. This is booking at anywhere other than the brothel. Plus, we had a few other harm minimization strategies. Then after a while, one of the workers who was okay with seeing him left to go traveling and no one else would see him, so he gradually stopped coming in as no one would intro him. I moved on receptioning at a different brothel. A new one had opened closer to where I lived and the pay was better, and he showed up again there. I knew he would frequent all the places he could until his reputation overtook him. When he showed up at the new place, I told all the workers about him, and no one was okay with seeing him. He only tried a couple more times before he abandoned us. A year or so later, I had moved on to a different job. I couldn't do night shifts anymore, and I was chatting with a friend from the brothel who said, "Oh my God, did you hear about the doctor? He whacked someone and got arrested." And it was true. The doctor had done that to a worker who had been sent to his apartment. The worker lay dead in his bed for 2 days. Officially, it was manslaughter, and he also pled guilty to supplying the substance that ended another worker. All this happened because A, he's a terrible dumpster fire human, and B, because one awful brothel manager and the owners behind her put profits in front of safety and kept sending workers to bookings with him without giving them full warnings, and specifically sending inexperienced workers and without keeping them in-house. It later came out that the medical board had known of his addiction for many years prior to his arrest, and it helped cover up some botched surgeries. It was horrifying to hear about, and we both spent some time telling stories we knew about him, but then I mostly forgot about it. Then I was chatting with an old friend the other day who reminded me of him, and I got on Google, I found out that he's been released from prison. I hope not practicing medicine, but he could be anywhere now. I had an encounter in December of last year that left me feeling very unsettled. I was in a vulnerable position as my partner and I, both female and homeless, had just purchased an RV to live in, but were having trouble finding a spot to rent because it was an older model and we had pets. We parked in the farthest corner of the Walmart parking lot in Bend, Oregon around 10 a.m. one day. My partner had errands that needed to be ran and took a bus to do, such as I held down the fort and watched the dogs. It was going to be a long day of waiting around for her to get back so we could leave. I went into the store twice to make some purchases earlier in the day. I worked on some maintenance and art before getting bored enough to take a nap. As I was taking the dogs outside beforehand, 2 police officer vehicles pulled up and parked right next to the RV. At this point, I'm preparing for them to ask me to move the vehicle or tell me I can't park overnight or something. After a while of nothing, I fell asleep anyway. When I woke up, I could tell it was getting toward the evening. The sun was still very much up, and considering the police presence, I wasn't particularly in the mindset of anything bad happening. Still, I always carry my pepper spray on me. My partner was not back yet, although I expected her late. She had our only phone, so I went to the store to check the time. The officers had already moved at this point, and the parking in the general area was pretty barren, save for one van parked in the spot right behind the RV. I entered the store and went to the restroom in the front. Then I walked to the electronics department to see what time it was on the displays. It was a few minutes before 6 p.m. I left after only having been in there a few minutes. As I was walking out the door, the crowd in front of me slowly dispersed to veer toward their respective vehicles. I continued walking behind one man who seemingly parked in the same direction as me. He was tall, thin, and scraggly with shoulder-length blonde hair and a black hoodie. I walked maybe 30 feet behind him the whole way. As he passed all the cars by the front of the store, I came to the conclusion that he must be the owner of the van by my RV. He walked with clear direction, not looking around for where his car was or anything. After passing the main crowd of the parking lot, I got my pepper spray out of my pocket and held it in hand as a routine safety measure. The man walked between the back of the RV and the driver's side door of the van. I figured he was about to get in, but instead he lingered. I stopped walking in that direction and headed toward a more populated parking area at the next store across the street, since it was closer than Walmart from his end. Then he looked at me and we made eye contact for a minute. It felt like he recognized me, as if though he'd been stalking me out and was surprised to see me leaving the store so soon. I continued to walk away while staring at him, and he watched me before slipping around the side of my RV, where there were some bushes and a fence with no outlet. I got out at this point, so I got into the other store and walk around blankly staring at things for a bit, trying to formulate a plan. It's pretty busy in there with no one at the customer service desk. So I go into the gas station next door and ask to use the phone. I call my partner to explain the situation and tell her not to go directly to the RV. Then I headed back into Walmart, got a coffee at the McDonald's inside, and waited there for another hour till she was able to return. Perhaps I should have called the police, as I was worried about my animals. The little dog would bark, but they're not guard dogs, and my possessions being stolen. But I had recently called 911 witnessing domestic violence, a few days prior, only to have them take 2 hours to show, up in the middle of downtown. I was worried. They would not only not help, but possibly harass me for parking there. I don't have a driver's license, so having to move the RV before my partner returned would be a dangerous situation. When she arrived, we went to the RV together. The van was gone. Nothing was touched despite one of the windows not locking properly, but the pets were very spooked. Maybe they decided against stealing after I caught them. But I'm not well off, and honestly, one look at that beat-up old thing would tell you I don't have much worth taking. Honestly, just from the look in that guy's eyes, I felt like he wasn't after material possessions. I'm an American living in France. At the time of this incident, I was working in a hotel kitchen for a 5-star hotel. I had to drive 30 minutes, catch a 30-minute metro, and then walk another 10 minutes to get to and from this hotel. I'd work from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. The boss was an idiot, and the customers were uppity idiots who thought 5-star meant that staff are not human. Basically, it sucked. One day I was having a particularly terrible shift. My hair was gross, my face was numb from smiling at rude customers, and all I wanted was to go home, take a shower, and go to sleep. So I put my earphones in and waited for the metro, At this stop, it was super busy, so the metro opened from both doors, letting people get on one side and off the other. The rest of the stops weren't as busy, so they only opened on the opposite side so people could get out. When the metro arrived, I stepped on and stopped next to the door that wouldn't open again, knowing I could lean back for the rest of the trip. Then a man in an electric wheelchair rolled on, and he stopped just in front of the same door as I was planning to lean against. He had a couple of bags hanging from the back of his chair, and he wasn't pulled up enough so the doors would shut on his bags. I knew the doors would close and remain closed, so instead of just telling him to pull up a bit, I held the bags forward a bit so that they wouldn't get caught in the door. The door closed, I let go, and the guy smiled at me. Then he started talking to me. I had my earphones in, so I couldn't hear what he said. I was exhausted, but I'm a nice person, so I took them out and talked to him. He clearly had a disability, as his speech was pretty hard to understand. My French isn't bad, but it wasn't good enough to understand him, so I told him, "I'm sorry, I don't speak French." He immediately switched to English. I thought. But again, I'm nice, so I kept talking to him. It was a normal conversation. "Where are you from? What are you doing here? How long have you been here?" Yada, yada, yada. Then he said, "You're beautiful. Are you getting off at X?" I was a little weirded out, but I said no, I'm getting off at W, which is one stop before. He said, "Get off at X with me. You can come over and we can hang out." I politely declined, and he said, "Kiss me." Forget it, I thought. I said no and put my earphones back in, ignoring him. He kept talking, but I couldn't hear him, and I was blatantly ignoring him. Then he pushed a loud buzzer on his chair to get my attention. Everyone was looking at us now, and I would have looked like a jerk if I'd kept ignoring him. So I pulled my earphones out, and he kept trying to talk to me, asking me if I had a boyfriend, if I wanted to be his girlfriend, if I would kiss him. Then he pushed a loud buzzer on his chair to get my attention. Everyone was looking at us now, and I would have looked like a jerk if I'd kept ignoring him. So I pulled my earphones out, and he kept trying to talk to me, asking me if I had a boyfriend, if I wanted to be his girlfriend, if I would kiss him. Keep in mind that I'm like 20 at this point, and he's a solid 50. Finally, my stop arrives. I say goodbye, and he rolls out of the metro with me. I told him this isn't his stop, and he said, "I'm coming home with you." I was thoroughly creeped out, but I figured I could ditch him easily at this point. We were 2 floors underground, and I could easily run up the stairs before he could get on the elevator. Feeling like a complete idiot for trying to ditch a disabled guy, I stick to my plan. Sprinting up the stairs, tripping a few times as I do, I get up to the ground floor and walk outside, satisfied that he's gone. As I'm walking to my car, I hear that buzz. He's behind me, zooming pretty fast after me. I start running, terrified of this dude who will not leave me alone. I get to my car, and I'm so freaked out that my hands are shaking and I have trouble getting the keys in the car. Finally, I do. I hop in and put it in reverse. When I check the mirror, there he is, parked behind my car and buzzing at me. I don't know what to do at this point. I can't reverse and run him over. I'm certainly not getting out to talk to him. But I have to get home, so I can't just sit there all day. This standoff lasted for about 10 minutes before he finally just strolls away, glaring at me as he does. I peel out of there and drive home, shaken but satisfied that I'd seen the last of that guy. The next morning, as I pull into the parking lot, still sleepy but ready for work, I get out of the car, get down to the metro, and there he is, waiting on the platform. I'd forgotten that the day before I told him that I work every day from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. He knew I would be there, and he knew when. He smiled when he saw me and started rolling over. I book it back up the stairs, calling my boss on the way, and telling him that I'll be late to work. I end up just driving into the city, wasting gas and spending a ton of money on parking. I haven't seen him again, and I've since started going to a different metro station. There are a few other stations that I can park at, but they're sketchy. This guy had very limited movement. He could only use his fingers enough to move the chair, so I know there's probably nothing he could have done to hurt me. And he was probably just a lonely guy who wanted someone to talk to. But I still panic every time I see a wheelchair. When I was growing up, we lived in Baltimore City until I turned 12. This incident happened, I believe, when I was around 7 or 8. I don't remember exactly, but I know it was definitely before I turned 9, because my older brother left for boot camp and then later deployed when I was 9. Both my brother and mother were and are in the military, and he was still at home and not yet in the military when this happened. Also, I am mute. I was born with deformed vocal cords, which isn't super important, but it does affect the story somewhat. Remain after subscription. Next story. For some background information, I live in a small apartment complex right outside my campus with some friends. I am also a 20-year-old girl, so all my friends were always bashing on me for never meeting up with any boys or going. I had gotten sick of it. I didn't want to be the little friend who stayed home and eats pizza while friends were out on dates with boys, so I signed up for Plenty of Fish. Now, I'm not the type of person who would say yes to any random stranger. They had to be nice looking. They had to have plenty of photos of themselves, and we both had to have at least 2 common interests. So with those rules in my head, I psyched myself up to join the world of online dating. Within a few days, I already had 2 boys I was talking to. One said he was a doctor, kind of hard to believe because he was 20, and one said he worked as a construction guy, easier to believe. I didn't think that the doctor guy was lying to me, but one day, as I was getting crap from my roommates, the construction guy, who we can call Dan, messaged me on a messaging app we were using and asked if I wanted to go out for a bite to eat. Told my roommates where I was going and who I was with. You know, all the things someone should do so someone knows if you've been abducted. I even had a check-in time so that when my roommates texted me if things were good, I had to say some silly code word that meant things were going good. If I responded with another code word, it meant help me get out of this. And if I didn't use code words, then she would call the police for help. So I quickly dolled myself up and got ready for my date. I put my hair in a classy bun, leaving strips of it hanging down around my glasses. I put on a nice white blouse and some black pants, and I was ready to go. I jumped in my car and headed out to the restaurant where Dan had chosen. It was just out of my town, but it was still only a 15-minute drive from my apartment. I arrived at the restaurant and saw him almost immediately. He was wearing some nice clothes and looked just like his photos. He was waiting just outside the restaurant doors for me. His eyes lit up when they saw me. He walked over to me and smiled. We chatted a little bit outside since it was summer, and not too cold outside, and then walked inside. We ate dinner and talked about our life and things like how school was going. I got the text from my friend, but since everything was all good, I sent that good code word back. Dan talked about how much he liked his job and things, and altogether it was pretty nice. Except for one thing. Dan was boring. He didn't do anything exciting or really talk enthusiastic about anything, and it was boring. It was an average date, and I honestly didn't care to go on anymore. The next day I woke up to the feeling of my phone vibrating nonstop. I looked at it and realized it was vibrating so much that it had fallen off my dresser. I almost laughed. Then I saw the messages were from Dan. At first, they were all things of how much fun he had had, and that he would really like to go out again. But then the messages took a turn. They got violent and angry that I wasn't responding. It was 7 in the freaking morning. I was sleeping. I noped out of that situation. I texted him back and said I had been sleeping and that no, I was not going on any more dates with him. I was just about to block his profile on both sites when I got a final message. "Watch your back," it said. At first I was really creeped out, but then I thought that since I had blocked him and all my accounts were deleted, he could do nothing wrong. Later that day, I saw a text from a random number telling me how pretty I'd look to my blue PJs. I glanced outside just in time to see none other than Dan running down my road. How the hell did he get my number? I thought warily. I blocked that number and continued what I was doing. Later that night, I fell asleep pretty early and woke up to my phone text alert going crazy. It was from the number I had just blocked earlier that day. There were dozens of messages saying how I was going to get it. I quickly showed all my roommates the messages. They all told me that I should go to the police, but since I was a stupid person, I didn't. I blocked the number again and went back to sleep, but once again I woke up to my phone buzzing. I didn't wait. I jumped in my car and drove all the way down to the police station. Once there, they told me they couldn't do much to help me and just told me to block the number. I did. At least I had it on record. Nothing happened for a few days. The number stayed blocked on my phone for a while. About then, the pictures started. They were pictures of my house, of me in my house, my car, and my work. I went back to the police, and finally I was able to get a restraining order against Dan. I never received any messages from Dan again after that. I now never ever use dating websites. At the age of around 6 or 7, I lived next door to an old 60 or so year old man named Keith. He would often go running around the streets as if he was very fit for his age. At the time I lived with my grandmother. She was friends with him and would often invite him round for a cup of tea and to gossip. Things were fine for a little while, until one day I looked out my window in my bedroom. From my window I could clearly see into his garden. He was laying on a deck chair, masturbating. As I was a child, I didn't understand, of course. I assume he didn't know I was there. The next day I went to open the curtains in the morning and saw him doing the same thing again. He looked up at me and smiled, then carried on. A few weeks later, with me not mentioning it to my nan in case she thought I was lying about it, I continued to see him almost daily. I started to realize it wasn't right when I noticed he would make an effort to make me look, by doing such things as making loud noises outside and even shouting my name. Soon after, it was my birthday. My nan invited him round to my party as most of our neighbors had been invited too. I was alone in the kitchen getting a glass of water when I heard the kitchen door open and saw him walk in. He was wearing gold cycling shorts which clearly showed off everything. At the time I thought it was just a fashion choice, but now I see that he wanted people to look. He said to me, "If you were my daughter, I would never let you leave the house looking so sexy. Thank you for keeping our secret." I don't remember my exact answer, but it was something along the lines of, "Sexy is a bad word." He started to pull down his shorts, and I panicked and called my nan. She rushed in to see him standing over me, quickly pulling his shorts up and with an erection. Thankfully, I never saw him masturbating after this. My nan called the police, and he got a warning. In my opinion, this wasn't enough for what he did. I lived next door to him for another 6 years. I'm a man in my late 20s. I work graveyard shift, midnight to 8 a.m., and have since turned 18. At the time of this story, I live with my wife and newborn daughter in a third-story apartment. Front door to the apartment and a small kitchen window are both accessible from the outside, but all other windows and the patio door, which is attached to the living room, are about 40 feet off the ground. We live in a pretty safe neighborhood, but it's surrounded by some pretty sketchy areas. Also important to note is that the only air conditioner we have is window-mounted to our master bedroom, so all three of us were sleeping in that one room. My daughter was only a month old at the time. It's late July and blistering hot outside. I'm a cold weather kind of person, so anything over 75 degrees and I'm fucking miserable. So I've got the windows open and the sliding door to the deck is wide open too, trying to get a breeze going through the house since only the bedroom has AC. To make matters worse, I've come down with this fever that is just kicking my ass, and I've just had a baby, so I'm running on about 10 hours of sleep for the whole of the last month. As I said, I normally work graveyard. But this particular night, as I went out to the living room to get dressed for work, I could barely lift my arms. You know how when you have a fever, your muscles turn to jello and everything hurts? That's me to the max. So I said fuck it, called in to work and passed out hard on the couch in the living room. I proceed to have hardcore fever nightmares and eventually awake in a pool of my own sweat. Check the clock. I've only been out for about 30 minutes. I start trying to go back to sleep when I hear this thump, thump, thump. I could not for the life of me figure out where this was coming from. The thumps continued. It's not loud, but it seems like it's right on top of me. I listen as closely as my disease-addled brain will allow me. And nothing. The noise is gone as quickly as it began. I take a peek on the video monitor to make sure my daughter is doing okay, and promptly go back to sleep. Thump, thump, shh. As once again I'm awake and trying to figure out what the fuck that noise is. My attention is drawn to my infant daughter crying in the other room. I know this means she's hungry, so I peel my ass off the couch and go to the kitchen to begin making her a bottle. My wife emerges from the bedroom unaware that I'm home and gasps with surprise, which startled me as well. Turn towards her to put her at ease, which causes the living room and the patio to be in my line of vision, though not hers, as she's still in the hallway. As I'm telling her it's okay, it's just me, I see something fall from the roof on the patio, and then a moment later, a man dressed from head to toe in black drops down from the motherfucking roof of our 3-story building onto my patio. My feverish, sleep-deprived brain went full panic mode, tried to think of words to blurt out, but all that came out was a loud panic scream as I took off running from the kitchen towards the patio door, which is wide open. The only thing keeping this fuckhead out is the flimsy-ass screen, which isn't even locked, and I'm moving like I've got cement blocks for feet thanks to this fever. Luckily, he heard my incomprehensible yelp and saw me running towards him in the darkness and decided to scurry back up onto the roof like a fucking ninja. Thump, thump, thump. I pull the door closed and lock it. My wife runs off to call 911. While waiting for the police to arrive, I see that he has left his duffel bag on the deck. When the police show up and investigate the bag, I was very upset by what they found inside. Zip ties, duct tape, condoms, disposable cameras, rope, a rather sizable dildo, a couple box cutters, and a nice big hunting knife. I have little doubt of what this man came to do that night, and if I had not decided to stay home, I don't see what would have stopped him. My husband and I moved into this house about 9 months ago. At first the neighbors seemed okay. We are the high and by type. There is a woman who lives across the street. I will call her Lucy. On Mother's Day, as my husband and I were leaving for brunch, Lucy wished me a happy Mother's Day, and I wished her the same. Lucy began approaching our driveway as we started to pull off. I didn't want to be rude, so I rolled down the window and told her we were in a hurry and we could talk when I returned. She became hysterical, yelling obscenities and throwing her hands in the air. My husband pulled off. When we returned, we noticed 3 of our 4 planters on pedestal stands located outside the front door were turned over her driveway. She didn't say anything, she just watched us. We decided to go to the store, replace the planters, and clean everything up when we put up the new planters. We also decided to get 6 Wi-Fi security cameras to put in all of our windows in case she pulled something like that again. When we pulled up, Lucy ran out again, but this time she brought a chair to the end of her driveway to watch us. As we were cleaning up and replacing the planters, a neighbor came to speak to us. He told us that the landlord should have warned us about Lucy, that Lucy sometimes does things like that if she feels slighted or disrespected. Our response was we were not there for her entertainment or companionship, and she needs to stay away from our property. When we began installing the cameras, she went back into the house. The next day when we left for work, Lucy ran outside in a nightgown and stood at the end of the driveway with her arms folded. When we returned home, we saw the planters were moved but not knocked over. This time we weighted them down with rocks. We looked at the video and saw 2 girls about ages 6 and 8 come from Lucy's house. They tried to push over the planters. When they didn't succeed, they went back to Lucy's house. We called the police to get the incidences on record in case Lucy decided to escalate. For the next 2 months, every time there was movement in front of our house, if she was home, Lucy would run outside. We decided to ignore her since it was clear she was mentally unstable. One day when we came home from work, she blocked our driveway with her car. We called the police who made her move it, but did nothing else. We explained the situation to the officer who stated we should just keep records of her behavior and call if she makes contact with us. A week later, she blocked our driveway with her car again. We called the police again. This time they gave her a ticket. Lucy continued to run outside anytime there was movement, but now she would also pull up in her vehicle about a minute before us, wait in her car, and get out when we got out. This happened no matter what time we got home after work. One night we noticed she was pulling out of a driveway at the end of the block. After this, we decided to use another entrance into the subdivision. This worked for about a week. Then she sat outside of that entrance and followed us in. I began videotaping these incidents with my camera. A month ago, when things escalated, I came home for lunch and there was a huge trailer blocking my driveway. I asked the driver to move and he refused, stating he was a friend visiting Lucy. I told him to move or I would call the police. He moved, but then moved back once I parked my car. I called the police and the number on the side of the trailer. The owner stated the trailer should not have been in a residential area and apologized. The police ticketed and made the driver leave. The man visiting Lucy was arrested for outstanding warrants for unauthorized entrance and criminal trespassing. About a week after this incident, she followed us into the subdivision, parked her car, and ran to the end of our driveway. She yelled about us contacting the owner of the trucking company and how stupid we were for doing that. She turned around and went to her driveway when she saw I had my cell phone recording her. We called the police, who took another report and warned her to stay away from us and the house. She went on about how we didn't own the house and how she could go anywhere she wants on our property. The officer warned her that if she does come on our property, she could be arrested. About a week ago, a group came on our property, began fighting on the front lawn and throwing trash everywhere. Lucy sat on the porch and yelled for the kids to yell louder and fight more. We called the police. The officer told us that they were just kids playing, and they all denied being sent by Lucy. We showed the officer the video, and he still refused to do anything. He told Lucy to stay away from us, a warning other officers have made, and she continues to ignore. The day after this, it was 40 degrees. Lucy came outside and stood in the middle of the street watching us. She has continued to do this every day, including this morning. It's obvious the police are not going to do anything. We have 3 more months left on our lease. Needless to say, we're going to move. But until then, we will keep calling police and saving the video recordings of her stalking and harassing us. I live in Norway, which is a small and safe country, where usually the creepiest thing to happen to you would be a nasty look from a stranger on the bus. Because of this, I never thought anything creepy would happen to me because, well, it just doesn't happen here. The city I live in is called Hennefoss, which basically translates to Chicken Falls. In the fall of 2015, right around the time I turned 20 years old, I moved out from my mom's into my first apartment. The apartment was in the basement of a house, and the owner of the house was an older single woman who lived above me. But we didn't get along that well. The house was situated at the end of a gravel road in a wooded area with fields around it about 1 kilometer from the main road. The last part of the road before you got to the house was up on a steep hill. To get to my apartment, you had to walk through the front gate and around the house to get to the basement where I lived. Right outside my door there was a small porch which was usually just used if I or any guests wanted to smoke. Because of the house being up on a hill, there was a really steep wooded slope about 5 meters from the entrance. This was also the end of the backyard, so I basically lived right next to the woods. So this all started in May 2016, when my boyfriend Sam moved in. He lived in Oslo, and therefore we needed a car to move all his things. His best friend Jessica agreed to help us when she got off work, which meant it was going to be a long night. Around 11 p.m., we left Oslo and started to drive to my place. Because of road work, we had to stop for some time and didn't arrive until 1 a.m. at my place. Because Hennefoss is a small city, it was dead silent when we arrived. We started unloading the car, and I grabbed some plastic bags and went around the house. Right as I stepped onto the small porch outside the basement, I heard a sound from the woods down the steep slope. It was the sound of leaves rustling in a particular rhythm, as if someone was walking in the woods and kicking the leaves when they lifted their feet. I thought this was kind of weird because I knew there wasn't any kind of hiking trail down there or any other reason for someone to be walking there, especially at 1 a.m. It was just woods and an empty field. Sam came up behind me, and he also stopped wondering why I was just standing there listening. "Shh, do you hear that?" The leaf sounds, I asked, but he didn't answer. Jessica also stopped to listen at this for a moment. "Hear what?" Jessica asked. But before I even had the chance to answer her, Sam told her about the rustling sound. "Yeah, I hear it. What is it?" she asked, but I literally had no idea. We all just brushed it off as some neighbors or kids, even though there wasn't a lot of neighbors that far into the woods. About a week later at 1 a.m., me and Sam sat outside smoking when I heard the sounds from the woods. We joked about what it could be, because as I said, we're from Norway, and creepy things just don't happen here. Stupid thinking, I know. We didn't pay much attention to the sounds, and eventually we went inside. A week later, same time we heard the noises again. At this time, I actually pieced together that this happened at the same weekday. Same time. Which was kind of strange, and we got a little scared. We joked about it being a killer living in an abandoned house next to us. We laughed, and again brushed it off as just some kids or an animal. But still, we were somewhat afraid of what it could actually be. The next week passed without any sounds from the woods, and we completely forgot about it until the week after. I didn't want to smoke, so Sam went out on the porch alone. After a few minutes, Sam busted the door. His eyes were wide, and he sounded scared as he whispered, "Quick, I can hear those sounds again." I ran outside and listened from the porch. Sam was right, the sounds were there again. The same rhythm and pace as before, only this time it sounded as if though they were our safe country. I was a little nervous, so I just looked and I shouted, who was just as nervous as me. "Very funny. Maybe I should call the police to let them know someone is creeping around my house." We both just laughed, and then we heard the sound stopping immediately. Thinking we scared off whoever it was creeping in the woods, we enjoyed the silence and shouted, "Lol." And right as I shouted, we hear the sound again, just faster and louder, and this time it sounded as if someone was full-on sprinting right towards us from down the steep slope. Just imagine if you ever tried walking up a steep hill covered in leaves, and your feet almost slipping under you because of it being so steep. That was the sound we could hear. At the same time, both Sam and I just turned around and ran as fast as we could inside, cigarettes still in hand. We locked the door and turned off all the lights and fall to the floor. I was incredibly terrified. Did you just hear that? I asked. Sam looked terrified and nodded. Someone was running towards us, I asked. He just nodded again. Right as he nodded, we hear a sound that still gives us both goosebumps to this date. It was the sound of boots walking on the wooden porch. It was so shocking my mouth was just open while holding my breath, scared that whoever was on the other side of the door could hear us. Sam looked at me and pointed to the door in panic, signaling that he also heard it. I lifted my shoulders. I guess it's the international gesture of, I don't know. We both just sat there for some time, too scared to move to the living room, when we heard a loud bang on the window next to the door. We both just sat there trying not to make a sound. Now the way the house was built was so that the upstairs where the lady lived was at street level. But if you went around the back, it would look like a 2-story house, even though my apartment was the basement. So basically, just half my apartment was the basement, if that makes any sense. The layout of my apartment was that when you entered the apartment, there was a bedroom to your right, a kitchen straight ahead of you. Next to it was a bathroom, which was between the kitchen and the living room, which was to your left. The living room was fully underground, and just had a small window by the ceiling, and you could just see a flower bed and a bush. But now we also could see a pair of worn-out boots in the dark. I looked at Sam and pointed to the window and whispered, "Kvon," Norwegian for what the fuck. Sam didn't say anything and just looked at me, still terrified. I'm not sure if the person outside even knew where the apartment was, because then he would have probably sat down to look at us. Maybe he thought that the basement upstairs were connected and that we ran inside and upstairs, and now the person outside was trying to look inside to see if he could see us. We crawled into the bathroom and locked the door and just sat there. We didn't have our phones, so I'm not sure how long we sat there. We sat there listening, but we couldn't hear anything. After probably half an hour, we crawled into the living room and put the sofa pillows in front of the small window and called my mother to ask what we should do and if we should bother to call the police. Stupid Norwegians, I know. We should have just called them as soon as we got our phones, but it's just not how we do it over here. And besides, the person was most likely gone now anyways. My mother was kind of angry that we woke her up at 2 a.m., but after we told her what had happened, she said it was okay, and that we should call the police if we felt it was necessary. At that time, we were just tired, and we knew that there was nothing the police could do. I mean, we didn't actually see the face of this person or anything other than his boots after he went away. We moved out about a week after that. For reference, I'm a 20-year-old Hooters girl and encounter creepy guys all the time, but never like this. I occasionally get asked for my number and to go on dates by older men, but always politely turn them down without really upsetting anyone. Was working the night shift the other night and had a 40-something-year-old man sit at my table by himself. I greeted them the way I greet all customers. Lots of smiling, laugh at their jokes, ask about his or her day, etc. He was really irritated and didn't seem to want to talk to me at all, so I assumed he was there to eat and go without all the chatting customers expect from the waitresses. I offered a box and dessert at the end of his meal, but he just paid and got up to leave. When I brought back his change, he grabbed my arm and pulled me close and said, "I want you so badly," before letting go and walking out the door. I was so uncomfortable I just stood there until he left. This was around 8 p.m., so I told the other girls, then I just kinda got over it. We closed at midnight on weekdays, so by the time I was ready to go, it was about 1:30 a.m. I carry a stun gun in my bag, and normally have someone walk me to my car, but it was so late that nearly everyone had already left. And those that were still there were busy trying to clean up so they could leave. I had parked right in front of the doors, leaving my car only 5 feet away, so I decided to quickly get in my car without being walked. I always lock my doors out of habit and went to check my phone, which was dead. I have one of those crappy chargers in my car that only charge at a certain angle, and was trying to get my phone to charge when a truck pulled up behind me, blocking me in. I couldn't pull forward because the restaurant was in front of me and I had this file knocked over. This time we weighted them down with rocks. We looked at the video and saw 2 girls about ages 6 and 8 come from Lucy's house. They tried to push over the planners. When they didn't succeed, they went back to Lucy's house. We called the police to get the incidences on record in case Lucy decided to escalate. For the next 2 months, every time there was movement in front of our house, if she was home, Lucy would run outside. We decided to ignore her since it was clear she was mentally unstable. One day when we came home from work, she blocked our driveway with her car. We called the police, who made her move it, but did nothing else. We explained the situation to the officer, who stated we should just keep records of her behavior and call if she makes contact with us. A week later, she blocked our driveway with her car again. We called the police again. This time they gave her a ticket. Lucy continued to run outside anytime there was movement, but now she would also pull up in her vehicle about a minute before us, wait in her car, and get out when we got out. This happened no matter what time we got home after work. One night we noticed she was pulling out of a driveway at the end of the block. After this, we decided to use another entrance into the subdivision. This worked for about a week. Then she sat outside of that entrance and followed us in. I began videotaping these incidents with my camera. A month ago, when things escalated, I came home for lunch, and there was a huge trailer blocking my driveway. I asked the driver to move, and he refused, stating he was a friend visiting Lucy. I told him to move or I would call the police. He moved, but then moved back once I parked my car. I called the police and the number on the side of the trailer. The owner stated the trailer should not have been in a residential area and apologized. The police ticketed the and made the driver leave. The man visiting Lucy was arrested for outstanding warrants for unauthorized entrance and criminal trespassing. About a week after this incident, she followed us into the subdivision, parked her car, and ran to the end of our driveway. She yelled about us contacting the owner of the trucking company and how stupid we were for doing that. She turned around and went to her driveway when she saw I had my cell phone recording her. We called the police, who took another report and warned her to stay away from us and the house. She went on about how we didn't own the house and how she could go anywhere she wants on our property. The officer warned her that if she does come on our property, she could be arrested. About a week ago, a group came on our property, began fighting on the front lawn and throwing trash everywhere. Lucy sat on the porch and yelled for the kids to yell louder and fight more. We called the police. The officer told us that they were just kids playing, and they all denied being sent by Lucy. We showed the officer the video, and he still refused to do anything. He told Lucy to stay away from us, a warning other officers have made, and she continues to ignore. The day after this, it was 40 degrees. Lucy came outside and stood in the middle of the street watching us. She has continued to do this every day, including this morning. It's obvious the police are not going to do anything. We have 3 more months left on our lease. Needless to say, we're going to move. But until then, we will keep calling police and saving the video recordings of her stalking and harassing us. I live in Norway, which is a small and safe country, where usually the creepiest thing to happen to you would be a nasty look from a stranger on the bus. Because of this, I never thought anything creepy would happen to me because, well, it just doesn't happen here. The city I live in is called Hennefoss, which basically translates to Chicken Falls. In the fall of 2015, right around the time I turned 20 years old, I moved out from my mom's into my first apartment. The apartment was in the basement of a house, and the owner of the house was an older single woman who lived above me. But we didn't get along that well. The house was situated at the end of a gravel road in a wooded area with fields around it about 1 kilometer from the main road. The last part of the road before you got to the house was up on a steep hill. The officer told us that they were just kids playing, and they all denied being sent by Lucy. We showed the officer the video, and he still refused to do anything. He told Lucy to stay away from us, a warning other officers have made, and she continues to ignore. The day after this, it was 40 degrees. Lucy came outside and stood in the middle of the street watching us. She has continued to do this every day, including this morning. It's obvious the police are not going to do anything. We have 3 more months left on our lease. Needless to say, we're going to move. But until then, we will keep calling police and saving the video recordings of her stalking and harassing us. I live in Norway, which is a small and safe country, where usually the creepiest thing to happen to you would be a nasty look from a stranger on the bus. Because of this, I never thought anything creepy would happen to me because, well, it just doesn't happen here. The city I live in is called Hennefoss, which basically translates to Chicken Falls. In the fall of 2015, Right around the time I turned 20 years old, I moved out from my mom's into my first apartment. The apartment was in the basement of a house, and the owner of the house was an older single woman who lived above me. But we didn't get along that well. The house was situated at the end of a gravel road in a wooded area with fields around it about 1 kilometer from the main road. The last part of the road before you got to the house was up on a steep hill. To get to my apartment, you had to walk through the front gate and around the house to get to the basement where I lived. Right outside my door there was a small porch which was usually just used if I or any guests wanted to smoke. Because of the house being up on a hill, there was a really steep wooded slope about 5 meters from the entrance. This was also the end of the backyard, so I basically lived right next to the woods. So this all started in May 2016, when my boyfriend Sam moved in. He lived in Oslo, and therefore we needed a car to move all his things. His best friend Jessica agreed to help us when she got off work, which meant it was going to be a long night. Around 11 p.m., we left Oslo and started to drive to my place. Because of road work, we had to stop for some time and didn't arrive until 1 a.m. at my place. Because Hennefoss is a small city, it was dead silent when we arrived. We started unloading the car, and I grabbed some plastic bags and went around the house. Right as I stepped onto the small porch outside the basement, I heard a sound from the woods down the steep slope. It was the sound of leaves rustling in a particular rhythm, as if someone was walking in the woods and kicking the leaves when they lifted their feet. I thought this was kind of weird because I knew there wasn't any kind of hiking trail down there or any other reason for someone to be walking there, especially at 1 a.m. It was just woods and an empty field. Sam came up behind me, and he also stopped wondering why I was just standing there listening. "Shh, do you hear that?" "The leaf sounds," I asked, but he didn't answer. Jessica also stopped to listen at this for a moment. "Hear what?" Jessica asked. But before I even had the chance to answer her, Sam told her about the rustling sound. "Yeah, I hear it. What is it?" she asked, but I literally had no idea. We all just brushed it off as some neighbors or kids, even though there wasn't a lot of neighbors that far into the woods. About a week later at 1 a.m., me and Sam sat outside smoking when I heard the sounds from the woods. We joked about what it could be, because as I said, we're from Norway, and creepy things just don't happen here. Stupid thinking, I know. We didn't pay much attention to the sounds, and eventually we went inside. A week later, same time, we heard the noises again. At this time, I actually pieced together that this happened at the same weekday. Same time. Which was kind of strange, and we got a little scared. We joked about it being a killer living in an abandoned house next to us. We laughed, and again brushed it off as just some kids or an animal. But still we were somewhat afraid of what it could actually be. The next week passed without any sounds from the woods, and we completely forgot about it until the week after. I didn't want to smoke, so Sam went out on the porch alone. After a few minutes, Sam busted the door. His eyes were wide, and he sounded scared as he whispered, "Quick, I can hear those sounds again." I ran outside and listened from the porch. Sam was right, the sounds were there again. The same rhythm and pace as before, only this time it sounded as if though they were closer. I was a little nervous, so I just looked at Sam, who was just as nervous as me.